And welcome back to America's Forum right here on Newsmax TV. I'm John Bachman, sitting alongside J.D. Hayworth and Morgan Thompson. We're talking about this huge case yesterday in Arizona, looking at voting rights and what they mean moving ahead in comparison to what happened last year at the Supreme Court.
And we're very pleased that still with us on the phone is Arizona Attorney General Tom Horne. And Morgan, I know you have a question for the general.
I do. Welcome back, Mr. Horne. Now, you were saying
you.
earlier...
I understand your Skype is working, so now I'll try looking into the camera.
That's right.
Yes. Hello. Now, you were talking earlier about a media cover-up of the seriousness of voter fraud in Arizona. That's a pretty strong charge to make. Are you able to substantiate that?
Yes, I can. The media have been constantly, and it's especially our newspaper and one of the channels that's connected with the newspaper, have been running articles saying that voter fraud is a myth, and they've been defending that by counting how many people were actually prosecuted. I mentioned earlier to you that over 200 people, which came out of a sample of 10%, so it really means over 2,000 people, were caught having registered to vote and then swearing on a commissioner form that they were not citizens. Of those, in the trial, it came out that of those 200 people, only 10 were prosecuted because local county attorneys have robbery, rape, murder, all kinds of serious crimes to deal with and limited resources. So they don't necessarily give a high priority to prosecuting voter fraud cases.
Not such a big story.
So the newspaper has been saying that there have been so few prosecutions, that proves that voter fraud is not a serious problem. But the evidence at the trial proved that voter fraud is a serious problem, and the number of prosecutions is a completely false metric. And they're using that to cover up the problem and make people falsely believe that voter fraud is not a serious problem, when in fact we have a federal district judge that listened to evidence for 6 days and concluded that it is a serious problem.
Okay, and moving on, this is a big day for Arizona and a big day. What does this mean for the rest of the states? I mean, how many other states are affected? Do we expect to see other lawsuits filed, or does this open the gates for everybody?
Well, I think assuming this decision will be upheld on the merits, which I think it will be on appeal, because it's based on the language in the U.S. Supreme Court case, which, as I mentioned earlier, that really was a victory, because even though it wasn't an immediate victory, we got the language that in the U.S. Supreme Court decision that led to this victory here yesterday. That will establish that the states have a right to ask for evidence of citizenship when they register voters if they want to. And so it won't require any more litigation. The states can just go ahead and do it. In fact, Louisiana has been doing it, and they were approved by the federal agency that we're dealing with. It's called the Elections Assistance Commission. And that was one of our arguments. Why should Louisiana be permitted and Kansas and Arizona not be permitted? It was kind of an arbitrary distinction there. So any state that wants to, it's just up to their legislatures or their voters, if they have initiatives, can pass a law saying, if you want to register to vote, show evidence of citizenship, because we only want American citizens to vote and not illegal aliens.
Mr. Horne, I want to go back. This is John Bachman here. I want to go back to something you just mentioned about the underreporting of these issues of voter fraud. And you know, I wonder if you could talk to us a little bit about this case that's just out of Iowa, and to give people some background. There was a woman who was convicted of a felony drug offense. She then registered to vote and went ahead and voted. She was prosecuted and acquitted yesterday. The jury saying that she, in effect, still has the right to vote, even though she's a convicted felon. That goes against Iowa law. But that kind of speaks to the fact that not only do these cases not get prosecuted, but if they do, they're very difficult to try. Is that another reason why we don't hear about this in the press?
It could be, and you know, there is a movement to change the law so that convicted felons can vote. If that were to succeed, I can just picture politicians appealing to the convicted felons vote by saying that they'll legalize bank robbery or whatever. It doesn't really make sense to permit convicted felons to vote.
Tom, I listen to that, and the politician in me suddenly thinks in a felon-eligible society, no one could run for attorney general and say, "I'm tough on crimes." That would be counterproductive with the felon vote. But all kidding aside, we've seen curious conduct, to put it diplomatically, by the federal government and the Department of Justice. We spoke earlier about Senate Bill 1070, the fact that the federal government filed suit against Arizona for enforcing federal immigration law. Since Eric Holder and his attorneys have done that already, what are the implications here? Do you expect now the federal Department of Justice to try and get involved and sue you again over this victory in the courts this week?
Oh, they have been involved. They've been one of our adversaries. They argued in both the Ninth Circuit and in the U.S. Supreme Court that we should not be able to ask for evidence of citizenship when people register to vote, which means not only are they unwilling to enforce the border, but they want illegals to vote, and that has been their position in court, and we beat them.
Well, let me go back to this question just a second, Tom, because those on the left speak of voter disenfranchisement, that elderly people may not have a driver's license, may not have easy access to their birth certificate. How do you counter those claims that officially at least become the reputable or the respected claims of the left in terms of discouraging voter participation?
Yes, this was one of the issues that I argued at the U.S. Supreme Court, and in fact, we have a finding by our trial court after a 6-day trial that said that it's not an undue burden. You have a lot of choices in Arizona. You can write down your driver's license numbers you mentioned, or a non-operator's identification number that the Motor Vehicles Division will give you, or if you're a naturalized citizen, your naturalization number, or a passport, or a birth certificate. There are a lot of choices. And the trial judge in our case found this was not an undue burden on voters. In fact, out of a state of over 6 million people, they were only able to find one single person who couldn't meet those requirements. She was about 100 years old. She'd been born in the Old South, and they didn't have birth certificates there. And of course, we would let her vote if she wanted to. So it's been actually demonstrated in trial that this is not a burden on citizens' ability to register and vote. But of course, you would never get that from the liberal media. As you know, JD, having had to fight them here in Arizona, and we miss you in Arizona politics, JD.
Well, I appreciate that, Tom. And as Morgan will attest, we aren't the media. We're Newsmax TV, and so we want to get this followed from all angles. Morgan?
Yeah, Mr. Horne, I have a bit of a change of topic here. I'm curious to know how all of this, if any, effect it's going to have on the 2014 elections.
It comes in time for the 2014 election. The district judge said it's effective immediately. Now, you know, in some cases, district courts will, and if in a controversial case, they'll suspend their judgment to give people a chance to appeal. But this is, in this case, the district judge said it would be effective immediately. So unless the Court of Appeals gives a stay, this is effective right now. And so it's in time for the 24
So it
elections.
will definitely have an effect.
Tom, we'll have to leave it there. Morgan, we thank you. Attorney General Tom Horne from Phoenix, we thank you for your time. There's obviously more to come on this subject later in our program, and there's more to come on America's Forum. Stay with us.